I'm Karen Peterson. That would be Nana Peterson, and I am Evan Olson's Nana. And I'm going to read to you a story from the Magic School Bus inside a Beehive. It is by Joanna Cole and illustrated by Bruce Deegan. Again, the Magic School Bus inside a Beehive by Joanna Cole and illustrated by Bruce Deegan. What a perfect spring day, said Miss Frizzle, looking out the window. We thought it was perfect too, perfect for playing softball. But the Frizz had something else in mind. It's just right for observing honeybees. We had been studying about all different kinds of insects. Now Miss Frizzle said she had found a beekeeper who would show us his beehives. The beekeeper is visiting his hives today. We'll meet him there, said the Frizz, and she swept out the door. As we boarded the old school bus, Miss Frizzle talked and talked about honeybees. They make a delicious food for us to eat, she said. They help many plants survive, and they are wonderful examples of social insects. Miss Frizzle drove out into the country and parked the bus next to the hives. The beekeeper was late, so Frizzle took out a picnic basket. Some light refreshments will pass the time while we wait, she said. Sometimes our teacher has good ideas. But just as she opened a jar of honey, her elbow knocked a strange little lever. The honey jar fell, and we heard a weird buzzing sound. It was the bus. It was vibrating and getting smaller. So was everything in it, including us. We're shaking. We're shrinking. I don't like when that happens. Before we knew it, the bus looked like a little beehive, and we looked like real bees. We really did. All out, class, buzzed the Frizz. One by one, we stepped out the door and looked over the nearest hive. At the entrance, worker bees were standing guard. Guard bees usually keep out bees from other hives, said the Frizz. There was one time when guard bees may let in a strange bee, said Miss Frizzle. Sometimes a hive may adopt a lost bee if it is carrying a lot of bee food. All bee food comes from flowers. We'll have to visit flowers and get bee food in order to gain entrance to the hive. Follow that bee, shouted the Frizz. We flew after a bee that was headed towards some bright flowers. Observe our bee, children, and do exactly what she does, Miss Frizzle called. The bee stuck her long tube-like tongue deep into a flower and pumped out nectar. We each did the same with a rubber tube. The bee carries the nectar in a pouch called a honey stomach, Frizzle told us. We carried our nectar in a tiny bottle. Pollen grains rubbed off the flower and stuck into the bee's fur. With her front and middle legs, she combed off the pollen and packed it into pollen baskets, pouches on her back legs. Then she returned to the hive. We packed our pollen and went along. One by one, we landed at the hive. The Frizz sprayed us with a bee pheromone, a chemical that bees make. Now we smell like bees. Then came the scary part. We held our breath as the guard bees brushed us with their antennae, smelling us. If they fell for our trick, we'd get into the hive. If they didn't, we'd get into big trouble. The guards smelled our bee spray and our bee food, and they let us pass. Other workers took our nectar and bustled off with it. Hooray! We're free to explore the hives, sang out Miss Frizzle. The first thing we saw was our bee. She was doing a strange dance. Other bees crowded around her, touching her and listening to her. Miss Frizzle said the dance was a language. With her dance, the bee told others which way to go to the flower she had found. The dance helped the bees find food faster. They did not have to waste time looking for it. They flew off into the direction of the flowers we had visited. New bees gathered around our bee to get the latest news. We passed the dancing bee and went deeper into the hive. The inside of the hive was covered with beeswax. The bees had shaped the wax into comb. Thousands of little containers called cells. Every cell was a hexagon, a six-sided shape. The comb was so perfect. We wouldn't believe bees had made it. "Make comb, class," said Miss Frizzle. We did our best, but our cells came out pretty lopsided. Luckily, the bees didn't notice us. They just tore down our cells and built them over again. Other bees were busy with other jobs, such as making honey. We saw the bees changing nectar into honey. First, they added chemicals from glands inside their heads. The chemicals changed the nectar sugars into honey sugars. Then they spread droplets out and fanned them with their wings. This dried up most of the water, leaving the honey thick, sticky, and extra sweet. We fanned too and helped make honey. Miss Frizzle said it was okay to eat some honey as long as we left plenty for the bees. They need a good supply of honey to help them survive over the winter, she explained. We stopped eating honey long enough to notice a bunch of worker bees nearby. They were tending a larger bee with a long, thin body. She was the queen bee. As the queen walked from cell to cell, she laid a small white egg in each one. The workers touched the queen with their antennae, they licked her with their tongues, and they fed her by mouth-to-mouth exchange. In some cells, we saw worm-like creatures. "These are larvae, baby bees that hatched out of the eggs," said Miss Frizzle. Nurse bees were feeding the babies. The larvae did nothing but eat fast and grow fast. Every time they got too big for their skins, they molted or shed their skins. Then they started eating and growing again. "When is it big enough the larva stops eating?" said the Frizz. "It spins a silk cocoon around itself. Now it is called a pupa. The nurse bees put a wax top on the cell. Inside, the pupa doesn't eat or grow bigger. It changes into an adult bee. This is called metamorphosis. When the pupa have finished changing into adult bees, they chew their way out of their cells," continued Miss Frizzle. "We saw new worker bees emerging. They let the air dry them off and started working right away. Meanwhile, we heard excited buzzing. What was happening? The queen was leaving the hive, and she was taking almost half the workers with her. They flew away in a thick swarm. What would become of the hive now? Miss Frizzle led the way to the queen cells. 2 new queens emerged at the same time. After they had dried out, they had a terrible fight. One queen stung the other queen to death. Then she killed the other queen pupa in the cells. Now she was the new queen. The worker bees pushed the new queen out of the hive. Miss Frizzle said she was going on a nuptial flight, a flight to mate with drones. After the new queen left, we heard heavy footsteps. It was a bear, trying to steal the honey and the bee larva. The workers flew out and tried to sting the bear, but its thick fur protected its body. We flew out and dived at the bear, but it kept coming at the hive. "We have to use strategy, class," called the Frizz. "We'll lure the bear away." Miss Frizzle made a beeline for the Beehive bus, and we followed. The jar of honey that had spilled before was still on the floor. The bear smelled the honey and came after us. "Miss Frizzle," we yelled, "do something!" She stepped on the gas, and the bus lurched forward. As we rounded a corner, the honey jar rolled out the bus door. As the jar fell, it returned to its normal size. The bear started eating honey and forgot all about us. Miss Frizzle reached for a joystick on the dashboard. To our relief, the bus lifted off. It wasn't a Beehive bus anymore. It was a bee bus. Down below, we saw the new queen returning home from her nuptial flight. We returned home from our flight too. The instant its 6 feet touched the ground in the school parking lot, the bee bus changed. It was a full-size school bus again, and we were human kids again. And back in the classroom, we thought of the perfect project to end the day. Baking honey buns, of course. believe that is the end of the book. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and I hope all of you guys have a great day. Thanks.